His attorney slid the settlement across that polished conference table, and I watched Joseph's face transform. Not slowly, instantly. Like someone had just told him the house was on fire with him still inside. That smile. God, that smile. The same one he'd given me at our wedding 12 years ago. The same one he'd flashed when he told me he was finally taking control of his life. It spread across his face as his fingers reached for that expensive pen, the one he'd bought with money that wasn't his. Then his lawyer leaned in, whispered something. Just a few words. And Joseph's face went from golden to ash. His hand froze mid-reach. His eyes snapped to mine across 6 feet of mahogany and 12 years of lies. For the first time since he'd asked me to leave my own home, I saw something real in his expression. Terror. Pure, cold, I've made a terrible mistake terror. I smiled. Not the broken smile I'd been performing for 18 months. Not the defeated expression I'd practiced in the mirror until my face ached. The real one. The one I'd been saving for this exact moment. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning because you need to understand how we got here. How a black woman everyone thought was losing everything actually orchestrated the most patient, most devastating countermove of her life. How the man who tried to steal my future ended up inheriting his worst nightmare. My name is Ivanka Bush. I'm 38 years old. And until 6 months ago, I was married to Joseph Bush, a man who loved my success story right up until he decided he deserved to be the author. Welcome back to Her Value Stories, where every story is a reminder that love, loss, and resilience visit us all, no matter where we come from or what we carry. We may never know when life will change or why certain hearts are tested, but every moment holds meaning worth telling. If you're new here, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. And to our returning hearts, thank you. Your presence is what gives these stories their voice. Stay with us until the very end. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let us know where you're watching from. Now, let us continue. We met at a tech industry mixer in Seattle when I was 26 and still believed in partnership as a concept that could survive inequality. I'd just been promoted to senior analyst at Cascade Solutions, a mid-sized software company making waves in enterprise solutions. Nothing flashy, but solid. Real.
I was good at my job.
Great, actually. The kind of employee who showed up early, stayed late, and made everyone around her look better without even trying. Joseph was 29, sales rep at a competing firm, all charm and ambition, wrapped up in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had this way of talking about the future like it was a destination he'd already purchased tickets to. Like success was just a formality, a foregone conclusion, something he deserved simply for showing up. I'm going to build something, he told me at the networking bar, drink in hand, confidence radiating off him like heat. A consulting business. Help companies streamline their operations. Be my own boss. I was impressed. Not by the dream. Everyone at those mixers had dreams, but by the certainty. He believed it so completely that I believed it too. That's ambitious, I said. What about you? He asked, leaning in like my answer actually mattered. What's your dream? I thought about it. To be really good at what I do. To build something stable. To never have to worry about money the way my mother did. He smiled. Practical. I like that. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, close family, friends from work. My mother, Claudette, pulled me aside in the bridal suite before I walked down the aisle. She was adjusting my veil, her hands gentle but her voice serious. Baby, she said, meeting my eyes in the mirror, I need you to listen to something your grandmother told me, and I need you to really hear it. I turned to face her. Mama, what? Always keep something of your own. She held my hands squeezed tight. Not secret money, just yours. Something nobody can take. Something nobody even knows to ask about. I laughed, nervous. Joseph and I are partners. We're building a life together. Why would I need? Not for today, she interrupted. For tomorrow. For the day you might need it. Your grandmother knew. I'm telling you now. Keep something of your own. I hugged her, told her I understood, and promptly ignored every word. I was 27 and in love. What did I need to protect myself from? The Seattle tech mixer buzzed with the artificial energy of networking, forced laughter, strategic handshakes, business cards exchanged like currency. Ivanka Chun, 26 and sharp in her tailored blazer, stood near the bar nursing a gin and tonic she didn't really want. As senior analyst at Cascade Solutions, she'd been sent to make connections. She was better with spreadsheets than small talk. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. She turned to find a man with an easy smile and confident posture. Joseph Mitchell, 29, with the kind of charm that came naturally to people who'd never had to work too hard for attention. That obvious? She asked. Only to someone who feels the same way. He extended his hand. Joseph. Sales rep, reluctant networker, future consulting empire builder. His confidence was magnetic. Within 20 minutes, they'd moved from the crowded conference room to a quieter corner, then to coffee the next evening, then to weekend hikes in the Cascades. Joseph loved that she was going places, he told her repeatedly. He found her ambition sexy, her focus admirable. When he proposed 11 months later, Ivanka said yes, without hesitation. They married when she was 27, in a modest ceremony overlooking Lake Washington. Patricia Liu, her college roommate and now a rising associate at a downtown law firm, served as maid of honor. He seems great, Patricia had said, though something in her tone made Ivanka look twice. But Joseph was great, attentive, supportive, proud of her accomplishments. The years that followed felt like vindication of every choice Ivanka had made. At 28, she became the youngest director in Cascade Solutions history. By 30, she was VP of Strategic Operations. At 35, she ascended to Chief Strategy Officer with a corner office, a base salary of $285,000, and performance bonuses that pushed her total compensation past $400,000 annually. Joseph's trajectory moved differently. His consulting business, launched with such optimism during their first year of marriage, limped along for 3 years before collapsing under the weight of insufficient clients and excessive overhead. Ivanka had encouraged him, covered their personal expenses when his income dried up, assured him that entrepreneurship took time. When he finally admitted defeat and took a corporate sales position, she'd held him while he cried. It's not failure, she'd whispered. It's pivoting. The job paid $75,000, respectable, but a fraction of what Ivanka earned. She told herself it didn't matter. Marriage wasn't a competition. They were partners. They bought a beautiful home in Bellevue for bedrooms, modern kitchen, a view of the mountains, with a monthly mortgage of $6,800. Ivanka quietly calculated that she covered roughly 70% of their expenses, but she never mentioned it. Joseph was contributing. That was what mattered. The first cracks appeared so subtly that Ivanka almost missed them. Must be nice, Joseph said one evening, watching her prepare for a board presentation. Having everyone treat you like you're special. She'd laughed, thinking he was joking. I'm not special. I just work hard. Right. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He started working late, later than seemed necessary for his role. When she asked about his day, his answers became vague, peppered with dismissive shrugs. Just the usual grind. When she tried to plan date nights, he was suddenly exhausted, scrolling through his phone with the glazed expression of someone mentally elsewhere. The accusations started small. She was too focused on work, too consumed by her career, neglecting their relationship. At first, Ivanka took them seriously, tried to adjust her schedule, carved out more time for them. But nothing seemed enough. You're different now, Joseph said one night after she'd turned down drinks with colleagues to come home early. All that success changed you. Ivanka stared at him, confused. She was the same person she'd always been, driven, focused, ambitious. He'd loved those qualities once, hadn't he? She pushed the thought away, told herself all marriages had rough patches. They'd weather this. They always had. She didn't know then that Marcus Holloway, Joseph's lawyer, was already drafting documents. That the man she'd built a life with was planning to dismantle it. That the golden years were about to tarnish beyond recognition. If this story is making you think about your own financial safety, or someone you love who might need to hear this, I hope you'll stay with me. Subscribe if this matters to you. Not for me, for the next woman who needs to know she's not alone. The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked between a Pottery Barn catalog and a solicitation from their insurance company. Ivanka almost tossed it with the junk mail, almost, but the unfamiliar logo caught her eye. Capital Reserve Financial. She didn't bank with Capital Reserve. She opened it standing in the kitchen, still wearing her work blazer. The account was in her name. Social security number, home address, everything correct. But the charges were foreign. Camless Restaurant, $342. The Edgewater Hotel, $487. Nordstrom, $1,156. A jewelry store in Pioneer Square, $3,200 for a purchase made 3 weeks ago, a necklace she'd never seen, never received. The statement showed a balance of $18,450. Ivanka's hands didn't shake. Years of high-stakes boardroom negotiations had trained her to compartmentalize shock, to think before reacting. She photographed every page with her phone, replaced the statement in its envelope, and set it on Joseph's side of the counter, where the mail accumulated. She said nothing that evening, or the next. She watched Joseph come home, sort through the mail, pocket the envelope without comment. She watched him kiss her cheek, ask about her day, scroll through his phone during dinner. Her gut, that reliable instinct that had guided every major career decision, told her to wait.
Watch.
Learn. Sandra Chun came highly recommended. Former FBI, now running the most discreet investigative firm in Seattle. Her retainer was $15,000. Ivanka paid it from her personal account without hesitation. I need to know everything, Ivanka told her during their first meeting in Sandra's downtown office. Every transaction, every movement, every lie. Can you do that? Sandra, 50-something with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much, nodded. I can do that. But, Mrs. Mitchell, you need to be prepared for what I might find. I'm prepared. She wasn't. 3 weeks later, Sandra spread the evidence across the conference table like a coroner laying out cause of death. Surveillance photos. Joseph and a young woman, blonde, petite, laughing over wine at a waterfront restaurant. Entering a hotel together, his hand on the small of her back. Text messages Sandra's tech specialist had recovered. Can't wait to see you tonight. Last night was incredible. She doesn't suspect anything. Melissa Grant, Sandra said. 28, marketing coordinator at his company. The affair's been going on for 14 months. Ivanka stared at the photos. She felt something crack inside her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. What else? Sandra's face darkened. That's where it gets worse. The financial records came next. Credit cards Ivanka had never opened, each bearing her forged signature. Sandra had compared them. Ivanka's real signature versus the forgeries. Close enough to fool a cursory review, sloppy enough to prove fraud to an expert. Capital Reserve, $18,450. Slate Financial, $31,200. Freedom Credit, $37,800. Total credit card debt in Ivanka's name, $87,450. But that was just the beginning. He refinanced your house 6 months ago, Sandra said, sliding over a document. Took out $150,000 against the equity. The paperwork has your signature, but I'd bet my license it's forged. Where did the money go? Not into your joint accounts. Ivanka felt cold. Where? Into an LLC he created. Mitchell Consulting Group. Registered in Nevada. Sandra produced another stack of papers. And then there's this. A business loan for $200,000, using your home as collateral. The lender never verified with you directly because the paperwork looked legitimate. The numbers swam before Ivanka's eyes. She forced herself to focus, to add them methodically. $87,000 in credit cards, $150,000 from the refinance, $200,000 in business loans. $437,000 in undisclosed debt, all tied to her name or their marital assets. He's been setting this up for years, Sandra said quietly. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. Ivanka sat in her home office that night at 2 a.m., long after Joseph had gone to bed, surrounded by Sandra's reports. The house was silent except for the hum of her laptop, the papers spread across her desk glowing in the lamplight. The affair hurt. God, it hurt, but she could survive betrayal of the heart. People did it every day. This was different. This was systematic destruction. Joseph hadn't just cheated on her. He'd weaponized her success, her good credit, her trust. He'd built a financial bomb and tied it to her name.
Why?
To fund his business? To impress his mistress? Or something darker, to ensure that when the marriage finally ended, Ivanka would be buried under so much debt she couldn't fight back? She thought of her mother's words, spoken decades ago in that cramped apartment. Don't trust people with your money. Don't let anyone make you small. Her phone sat on the desk. She picked it up, dialed. Baby. Claudette's voice, thick with sleep, but instantly alert. What's wrong? Mama, Ivanka said, and her voice finally cracked. I need to tell you something. She explained everything. The affair, the debt, the forgeries. Her mother listened without interrupting, the way she always had when Ivanka needed her most. When Ivanka finished, silence stretched between them. Baby, Claudette finally said, what are you going to do? Ivanka looked at the evidence surrounding her, proof of Joseph's betrayal in black and white. She thought of her father, absent and unreliable, of her mother, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to keep them afloat, of every boardroom where she'd outmaneuvered men who underestimated her. I'm going to protect myself, Ivanka said. Just like you told me to. Good, Claudette said. Now tell me your plan. For the first time in weeks, Ivanka smiled. For years ago, Ivanka had sat in the executive conference room at Cascade Solutions, surrounded by mahogany and glass, while the CEO slid a leather portfolio across the table. Chief Strategy Officer, he'd said, smiling. We're lucky to have you. The base salary had been impressive, $285,000, but it was the equity package that made her pause. 50,000 stock options at a strike price of $4 per share. The company was valued at roughly $400 million then, privately held, with whispers of going public within 5 years. She'd done the math immediately, the way she always did. At current valuation, the options were worth approximately $200,000. Nice, meaningful, but not life-changing. A solid incentive package for a senior executive. She'd signed the contract, taken it home, filed it in her office cabinet under Employment, Confidential. Not hidden, just separate. Joseph had been dealing with his consulting business collapse at the time, drowning in his own professional disappointment. He'd asked if the promotion came with a raise. She'd said yes. He'd never asked about the details, never requested to read the contract. She'd assumed he wasn't interested in the minutiae of corporate compensation packages. Now, sitting in Patricia Liu's office 18 months after that credit card statement, Ivanka understood. Joseph hadn't asked because he thought he already knew everything that mattered. He was wrong. 8 months ago, Ivanka said, watching Patricia's face carefully, Cascade Solutions was acquired by TechFlow International. Patricia nodded. I remember reading about it. Major deal, right? Tech press was buzzing. $2.8 billion. Ivanka pulled a document from her bag, slid it across Patricia's pristine desk. My stock options vested immediately upon acquisition per the terms of my original contract. At the acquisition price, they're now worth $4.7 million. Patricia's pen stopped mid-note. She looked up slowly, dark eyes sharp. 4.7 million. After taxes, roughly $3.2 million liquid. Ivanka's voice was steady, clinical. The money is currently sitting in a segregated investment account at Merrill Lynch. It's never been commingled with our marital assets. It was earned through my individual employment contract, not through any joint efforts or investments. Which means it's legally classified as separate property under Washington state law. Patricia leaned back in her chair, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Your husband doesn't know about this. Joseph never asked. Ivanka felt a cold satisfaction in the precision of that statement. He was aware I had stock options. They were mentioned briefly when I took the CSO role. But he never inquired about the terms, the vesting schedule, the acquisition clause. He certainly doesn't know they vested or what they're worth now. Patricia studied her old college roommate with new eyes. The brilliant, bookish girl who'd stress-eaten instant ramen during finals had become something sharper, more formidable. You have significant assets to protect. More than I initially thought. There's more. Ivanka opened her bag again, withdrawing the thick folder Sandra Chun had compiled. I hired a private investigator. She laid out everything. The affair, the forged signatures, the credit cards, the refinancing, the fraudulent business loans. Patricia's expression shifted from professional interest to genuine shock as the evidence accumulated. $437,000, Patricia said finally, her lawyer's mind already calculating angles. All in your name or tied to marital assets. All his responsibility, once the divorce finalizes, Ivanka said. If we structure it correctly. Patricia's eyes narrowed with understanding. You have a strategy. What if we let him think he's winning? Ivanka leaned forward, her voice low and controlled. Joseph has always been motivated by ego. He resents my success, my salary, my position. He feels emasculated. So what if, in the divorce, we let him take the lead? Let him demand everything. The house, the retirement accounts, the joint investments. Assets that are actually debt bombs, Patricia said slowly.
Exactly.
The house has $200,000 in fraudulent loans against it. The joint accounts are depleted. The retirement funds he knows about are relatively modest, maybe $180,000 combined. He thinks he's getting the prize. Ivanka's smile was cold. But he's actually getting the bill. Patricia tapped her pen against her notepad, thinking. The stock options are separate property. We can absolutely protect those from division. Your employment contract, the vesting terms, the segregated account, it's textbook separate property law.
But
She met Ivanka's eyes. This strategy is brilliant, but risky. You'll have to look like you're giving up everything in the divorce. You'll have to appear weak, defeated even.
can you do that?
Ivanka thought of her mother, working double shifts while Ivanka's father promised he'd contribute next month, always next month. She thought of the countless boardroom negotiations where she'd let men underestimate her before closing deals they never saw coming. She thought of Joseph, lying next to her for years while planning her financial destruction. Yes, she said. I can do that. Patricia nodded slowly, respect evident in her expression. Then we need to be methodical. We document everything Joseph is demanding in the divorce, every asset he wants, every division he proposes. We prepare full disclosure of all liabilities, but strategically timed. We let him salivate over the house, over winning the marital estate. And when it finalizes? When it finalizes, he owns the house and all the debt secured against it. He takes the retirement accounts and the joint investments. You walk away with your separate property. The stock options he never knew were worth anything. Patricia paused. And then we refer the fraud to the authorities. Credit card fraud, forgery, loan fraud. Federal crimes, Ivanka. He could face prison time. Good. Ivanka's voice was ice. He wanted everything. I'll give him everything. Patricia studied her friend for a long moment. You've changed. No, Ivanka said, standing. I just stopped pretending that fairness and honesty were guaranteed. My mother taught me to protect myself. I should have listened sooner. One more thing, Patricia said as Ivanka reached the door. Once we execute this strategy, there's no going back. Joseph will know you played him. He'll hate you for it. Ivanka turned back, her expression unreadable. He already destroyed whatever we had. I'm just making sure he pays for it. As she left Patricia's office and stepped into the Seattle drizzle, Ivanka felt something she hadn't felt in months. Control. Joseph had spent years setting his trap, carefully constructing her financial ruin. He never considered she might be building her own. That's exactly the point, she thought, echoing Patricia's words. Let him think he'd won. The real game was just beginning. Joseph came home at 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, earlier than he'd been arriving for months. Ivanka was at the kitchen island, reviewing quarterly projections on her laptop, a glass of Pinot Grigio sweating on the granite beside her. "We need to talk," he said. Something in his tone made her look up. He wasn't angry or nervous. He was calm, resolved, the way someone looks when they've already made a decision and are simply going through the motions of announcement. Okay. She closed her laptop slowly. Joseph pulled out the stool across from her, but didn't sit. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at her the way a manager looks at an employee being let go. Professionally distant. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air. Ivanka let her face register shock, eyes widening, mouth opening slightly. It wasn't entirely performance. Even though she'd known this was coming for weeks, hearing him say it still hit differently. "What?" Her voice came out small, wounded. "I've already spoken to an attorney. Marcus Holloway. I want the house, the cars, your 401k, the savings. Everything we've built together." He said it matter-of-factly, like reading items off a grocery list. "I think it's fair, given what I've contributed to this marriage." "Joseph." She reached for him, let her hand tremble. "We can work on this. We can go to counseling, we can—" "No." He stepped back from her touch. "This has been over for a long time, Ivanka. You just haven't noticed because you've been too busy with your career." The accusation landed like a slap. She let tears well in her eyes. Not difficult when facing the wreckage of 8 years, when confronting the depth of his betrayal. "How long?" she whispered. He had the decency to look away. "Does it matter?" She didn't mention Melissa Grant by name. She didn't need to. The implication sat between them, heavy and unspoken. That night, Joseph moved into the guest room. The shift was immediate and brutal, from husband to hostile stranger sharing square footage. He treated her like a visitor in her own home, claiming the master bathroom for his morning routine, leaving his dishes in the sink for her to clean, playing music late into the night. 3 days later, Ivanka received the formal demand letter from Marcus Holloway. She'd researched him, of course. Marcus Holloway, 52, senior partner at Holloway and Associates. Known for aggressive asset division tactics for destroying opposing parties in divorce proceedings. His fees started at $500 per hour. His win rate was legendary. Joseph had hired a weapon. The letter laid out demands in clinical detail. Primary residence, 847, Bellevue Court. Current market value, $1.2 million. Ivanka knew the real number. Underwater by $200,000 after Joseph's fraudulent refinancing and loans. Vehicles, 2023 Tesla Model X and 2022 BMW X5, combined value $90,000, both leased with balloon payments due in 18 months that would devastate whoever held them. Retirement accounts, Ivanka's 401k, current balance $340,000, subject to 40% in penalties and taxes for early withdrawal, leaving maybe $200,000 actual value. Joint savings, currently $125,000, mostly depleted by Joseph's secret debt payments, though he'd somehow failed to drain it entirely. Future earnings, 50% of any bonuses, stock compensation, or salary increases for the next 5 years. The letter concluded, "Mr. Mitchell has been more than reasonable in this matter. We expect your client's cooperation in expediting this process." Ivanka read it twice in her car before driving to Patricia's office, hands steady on the wheel. Joseph's confidence grew daily. He told colleagues at work he was finally taking control of his life. His social media, usually dormant, suddenly came alive with vague inspirational posts. New chapter, new life. Sometimes you have to walk away to find yourself. The comment section filled with supportive messages from people who didn't know the full story. He brought Melissa to the house once. Ivanka had come home early from work, intentionally, because Sandra's surveillance had tipped her off, and found them in the living room. Melissa, petite and blonde in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, had frozen like a deer in headlights. Joseph had looked defiant. Ivanka, this is Melissa. We work together. His tone dared her to make a scene. She'd stood in her own doorway, holding her briefcase, looking at the woman her husband had chosen. Melissa had the decency to appear uncomfortable, her eyes darting between them. Nice to meet you, Ivanka said softly, then walked upstairs to her office and closed the door. She'd sat there for 20 minutes, breathing slowly, listening to them leave. Then she'd called Patricia and added the incident to their documentation file. At work, Ivanka became a ghost of herself. She told her executive assistant she was going through a difficult personal time. For the first time in her career at Cascade Solutions, she took 3 days off. When she returned, colleagues whispered in hallways, their glances full of pity. At mediation sessions, she dressed down, simple slacks, muted blouses, minimal makeup. She wore her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail instead of her usual polished style. She spoke softly, hesitantly, letting sentences trail off. She looked exhausted because she barely slept, defeated because that's what they needed to see. I just want this to be over, she told the mediator during their second session, her voice breaking. Joseph can have what he wants. I'm tired of fighting. Across the table, Marcus Holloway smiled slightly. Joseph nodded, vindicated. Only Patricia, sitting beside Ivanka, saw the microscopic tension in her friend's jaw. Behind the performance, the real work continued. Late-night meetings with Patricia, spreadsheets, and legal briefs spread across her kitchen table. Phone calls with her mother, Claudette's voice providing the steel Ivanka needed to maintain her facade. She continued making payments on the fraudulent debts, thousands of dollars monthly, to protect her credit score, to maintain the illusion that everything was fine financially. She documented every interaction, every demand Joseph made, every condescending comment. Every time Marcus sent an aggressive email, Patricia responded with manufactured weakness. My client is willing to compromise. She just wants an amicable resolution. Marcus thought he was destroying a broken opponent. His emails grew more demanding, more contemptuous. Behind the scenes, Patricia was building something else entirely. He's overconfident, Patricia said during one of their secret meetings, reviewing Marcus's latest motion. He thinks you're collapsing. That's good. Overconfident opponents make mistakes. How long do we maintain this? Ivanka asked. Until the trap is set perfectly. Patricia's smile was sharp. Until every asset he's demanding is legally his responsibility. Then we spring it. Ivanka looked at the pile of evidence on the table, Joseph's fraud, his affair, his systematic destruction of their finances. She thought about Marcus Holloway's smug emails, about Joseph's entitled demands, about Melissa Grant in her living room. How much longer? She asked again. Soon, Patricia promised. Very soon. In the guest room down the hall, Joseph scrolled through real estate listings on his phone, already planning the life he'd build with Melissa in the house he was taking from his wife. He had no idea he was walking into quicksand. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, if you've ever watched someone take credit for your work, if you've ever been told you're not enough while giving everything you have, this next part is for you.
Hit subscribe.
You'll want to see how this ends. 6 months. That's how long Ivanka played the role of defeated wife. 6 months of careful, calculated vulnerability. 6 months of letting Joseph believe he'd won. The transformation was meticulous. At Cascade Solutions, colleagues who'd known her as sharp and unshakable now saw someone diminished. She arrived late. Occasionally, unheard of for Ivanka Chin-Mitchell. She wore the same black blazer 3 days in a row. She declined lunch invitations, citing exhaustion. David Park, VP of Operations and her closest work ally, cornered her by the coffee machine one morning. Ivanka, are you okay? You can take more time off. We can redistribute your projects. She'd let her eyes well up, just slightly. I'm fine. Just going through something difficult at home. I'll be okay. He'd squeezed her shoulder, genuine concern on his face. Whatever you need. She documented the interaction in her phone later. DP offered support, believes narrative. Performance holding. Joseph's satisfaction grew with each passing week.
He walked taller, spoke louder.
His social media presence exploded. Photos at restaurants Ivanka recognized from Sandra's surveillance reports, cryptic quotes about living authentically, check-ins at wine bars in Belltown. The mediation sessions were masterpieces of manipulation. Ronald Chen, the court-appointed mediator, was a 60-something former family court judge with kind eyes and a reputation for fairness. By the third session, he looked actively uncomfortable. "Ms. Bush," he said. She'd reverted to her maiden name in all legal documents, another calculated choice. "I have to advise you that you're entitled to significantly more than what you're agreeing to here. Washington is a community property state. You have rights." Ivanka sat beside Patricia, shoulders slightly hunched, hands folded in her lap. She'd worn a simple gray dress, no jewelry except her wedding ring, which she deliberately kept on, a visual reminder of broken vows. "I understand," she said softly. "But I just want peace, Mr. Chen. I can start over. I'm still young. I have my career. Joseph can have the house, the cars, it's fine." Across the table, Marcus Holloway's pen moved swiftly across his legal pad. Joseph sat beside him, arms crossed, expression unreadable but eyes glinting with victory. "The retirement accounts." Ronald tried again. "He can have them." Ivanka's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll rebuild. I just want this to be over." Patricia played her role perfectly, the concerned attorney trying to protect a client too broken to protect herself. "Ronald, my client has made her position clear. She's exhausted by this process. Perhaps we should respect her wishes." After the session, Marcus pulled Joseph aside in the courthouse hallway. Sandra's investigator, a different operative this time, someone Joseph wouldn't recognize, was close enough to hear. "She's completely broken," Marcus said, genuine satisfaction in his voice. "This is going better than expected. We're getting everything, and she's not even fighting. Honestly, I thought she'd have more spine given her career." Joseph's response was captured on the recording device. "She's always been soft underneath all that corporate bullshit. She just needed someone to finally stand up to her." The daily phone calls with Claudette were Ivanka's lifeline. "Baby, what are you doing?" her mother asked for the 100th time, her Haitian accent thickening with concern. "He's taking everything. People talking, saying you giving up too easy." "Trust me, Mama." Ivanka sat at her car in the Cascade Solutions parking garage, the one place she could speak freely. "Just a little longer." "You know what you remind me of?" Claudette's voice softened. "Your grandmother. My mother. She had this way. She let men think they were in charge, let them feel big. And then, a snap of fingers across the phone line. She'd show them who really had the power. You got this from her, I think." Ivanka smiled in the darkness of her car. "I hope so." "How much longer, baby?"
2 weeks.
"Maybe 3. Patricia's finalizing the documents now. And then he learns what he really took." Simone Jackson had known Ivanka since they were 8 years old, sharing a classroom in Tacoma, bonding over being the only girls who finished their math homework during recess. Now a pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's, Simone could read Ivanka better than anyone except Claudette. They met for coffee at a quiet cafe in Capitol Hill, far from anywhere Joseph might appear. "Girl, you're planning something." Simone stirred her latte, dark eyes studying her best friend. "I can tell. Everyone else thinks you're falling apart, but I know better." Ivanka glanced around the cafe, then leaned forward. "I need you to trust me. And I need you to keep acting worried about me. At Jenny's birthday party last week, I told everyone I was concerned about you. That you seemed fragile." Simone's mouth twitched. "Was that good?" "Perfect." Ivanka squeezed her hand. "Just a little longer." "Is it the stock options?" Simone whispered. "The ones from the acquisition?" Ivanka's eyes widened. "How did you? You told me about them last year, remember? When we got drunk after the acquisition closed. You said they were worth stupid money, but you'd never mention them to Joseph." Simone grinned. "I'm a nurse, not stupid. I can add. Don't tell anyone." "Who would I tell?" "I'm too busy being publicly worried about my poor, broken friend." Simone's expression turned serious. "Kick his ass, Vanka. Legally speaking. At work, the performance continued. David Park quietly redistributed some of Ivanka's client meetings. Her assistant, Christina, brought her tea and asked fewer questions. During an executive meeting, Ivanka deferred to others more than usual, her normal commanding presence muted. Later, David would remember this period and realize he'd witnessed not weakness, but the most impressive strategic patience of Ivanka's career. Joseph's inner circle evolved with his perceived victory. Melissa Grant became a fixture. She moved belongings into the house, toiletries in the master bathroom, clothes in the closet that had been Ivanka's. She shopped online for furniture during work hours, her computer screen displaying sleek modern sofas and minimalist dining sets. "We're going to redecorate everything," she told Joseph one evening, her voice carrying to where Ivanka worked in her home office. "Make it really ours, you know?" Ivanka documented the conversation, then returned to reviewing Sandra's final report. Joseph's younger brother, Marcus Bush, no relation to the lawyer, called Joseph one evening. Ivanka overheard from upstairs, Joseph's voice defensive. "Man, you sure about this? Ivanka's good people. And this whole thing with Melissa, the timing." "I'm done being the less successful spouse," Joseph snapped. "You don't understand what it's like, living in someone's shadow. Everyone always asking about her career, her promotions, her success. How's Ivanka doing? Must be nice being married to such a powerful woman. Like I'm some fucking accessory. So, you blow up your marriage and take everything from her? That's the solution?" She had her chance. Now it's my turn. Marcus Bush hung up, troubled. He'd call Ivanka weeks later to apologize for not seeing sooner who his brother had become. Behind the scenes, Patricia Liu worked with surgical precision. The final divorce documents were works of legal art. Every asset Joseph demanded was listed clearly. The house at 847, Bellevue Court, the 2 vehicles, the retirement accounts, the joint savings, even Ivanka's grandmother's china set that Joseph had insisted on including. Attached to the asset division was a complete liability disclosure, 63 pages of itemized debt, each entry verified and cross-referenced. Capital Reserve Financial Credit Card, $18,450 Slate Financial Credit Card, $31,200 Freedom Credit Account, $37,800 First Horizon Home Equity Loan, $150,000 Nevada Business Loan, Mitchell Consulting Group LLC $200,000. The language was precise. Party accepting assets assumes all associated liabilities, debts, and obligations related to said assets, including but not limited to any fraudulent accounts opened, loans secured against property, or financial instruments created during the marriage. Marcus Holloway barely glanced at the liability section. He was too focused on the assets, on the victory. The documents included a waiver, Joseph declining an independent financial audit, stating he was fully aware of all marital financial obligations and assets. It echoed the model story perfectly. Ivanka had read the waiver 3 times, remembering how another man had signed away his right to know, too blinded by greed to see the trap. Ivanka began moving important personal items to a storage unit in Renton, documents with sentimental value, photos of her mother and grandmother, her grandmother's jewelry, not the china set. Joseph could have that. University diplomas, personal papers. She left behind everything Joseph wanted. The expensive furniture, the art, the kitchenware, the decorative items that had made the house a home. "He can have the house," she told Patricia during one of their final prep sessions. "It's just walls now anyway." Patricia studied her friend. "You're sure about this? Once we execute, there's no going back. He'll know you played him." "I'm sure." The night before the final court date, Ivanka sat in the small apartment she'd secretly rented, a 1-bedroom in Fremont, modest and temporary. Her laptop was open to Sandra's final investigative report. 6 months of surveillance, financial forensics, documented fraud. Patricia's strategic brief sat beside it, a timeline of every maneuver, every legal checkpoint, every contingency plan. Her phone buzzed. "Claudette, tomorrow you take back your power, baby. I'm proud of you." Ivanka typed her response carefully. "Tomorrow he learns what he really took." She looked around the sparse apartment, so different from the Bellevue house with its mountain views and designer kitchen. This place was small, plain, temporary. But it was hers. Truly hers. Paid for with money Joseph knew nothing about, a safe harbor while the storm she'd carefully constructed finally made landfall. In the Bellevue house, Joseph and Melissa christened the master bedroom again, celebrating their imminent victory. He told her about the court date tomorrow, how it was just a formality. How Ivanka had given up, given in, given him everything. Melissa scrolled through Pinterest on her phone, saving ideas for the remodel. They fell asleep in the bed that still held Ivanka's carefully selected sheets, under the roof that was about to become their beautiful, expensive nightmare. Ivanka set her alarm for 5:30 a.m. She needed to arrive at the courthouse early, needed time to center herself before the performance of a lifetime gave way to revelation. She fell asleep reading her grandmother's favorite proverb, written in her mother's handwriting on a card Claudette had sent. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Tomorrow, Joseph would taste that fruit. The King County Courthouse rose against the gray Seattle morning, all concrete and glass, imposing in its bureaucratic authority. Inside, Family Court Division 4 waited in quiet anticipation, wood-paneled walls absorbing 30 years of broken promises and severed unions, the air heavy with the particular tension that precedes finality. Judge Andrea Williams had presided over this courtroom for 3 decades. She'd seen every manipulation, every lie, every desperate gambit humans deployed when marriage became war. At 62, she had little patience for games, and even less for injustice. Morning light filtered through high windows as the parties assembled. Joseph arrived first, confident in an expensive charcoal suit Ivanka recognized from the credit card statements, $2 for $100 at Nordstrom, purchased 3 weeks ago. A new Omega watch caught the light on his wrist, another fraudulent acquisition. He moved with the swagger of someone already celebrating victory, barely glancing toward where Ivanka would sit. Marcus Holloway walked beside him, expensive briefcase in hand, containing what he believed was their triumph. Documents transferring $1.8 million in assets to his client, leaving the ex-wife with a pittance and a lesson about knowing her place. In the hallway outside, Melissa Grant waited, not allowed in the courtroom but close enough to celebrate immediately. She'd taken the morning off work, worn a new dress for the occasion. Ivanka entered quietly. She'd chosen a simple navy dress, professional but understated. No jewelry except small pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her makeup minimal. She looked tired, genuinely tired after 6 months of performance and sleepless nights, but composed. Patricia Liu walked beside her, all business in a sharp black suit, her expression carefully neutral. A leather portfolio under her arm contained documents that would detonate like legal explosives. In the gallery, Claudette Chen sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap, back straight. She wore her church clothes, a burgundy dress and sensible heels. Her presence was a statement. My daughter is not alone. Joseph's side of the gallery was empty. His brother had declined to attend. His parents lived in Florida and hadn't been told the details. His friends from work didn't know the hearing was today. The absence spoke volumes. All rise, the bailiff intoned. The Honorable Judge Andrea Williams presiding. Judge Williams entered, her black robe settling around her like armor. She was a small woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd read the case file that morning, had noticed irregularities, had made notes in the margins. Be seated. She adjusted her glasses, surveyed the courtroom. Case number 24-3-09847-1 SEA, in re the marriage of Bush and Mitchell. Counsel, I understand the parties have reached a settlement agreement. Marcus Holloway stood, smooth and practiced. Yes, Your Honor. After extensive negotiations, the parties have agreed to terms both find acceptable. Proceed. Marcus outlined the agreement with the confidence of someone who'd won decisively. The house at 847 Bellevue Court, current market value approximately $1.2 million, to Joseph Bush. Both vehicles, the 2023 Tesla Model X and 2022 BMW X5, combined value $90,000 to Joseph Bush. Retirement accounts totaling $340,000 to Joseph Bush. Joint savings account, current balance $125,000 to Joseph Bush. And Ms. Bush receives? Judge Williams asked, her tone already skeptical. A cash settlement of $75,000, Your Honor. Clean break, no spousal maintenance. The judge's eyebrows rose. She looked at Ivanka directly. Ms. Bush, this seems significantly disproportionate. You're entitled to half of all community property under Washington law. Ivanka stood, her voice steady and clear. Your Honor, I understand my rights. But I built a successful career. I can rebuild financially. I want this marriage to end peacefully. Mr. Bush can have what he's requesting. You're represented by competent counsel? The judge's eyes moved to Patricia. Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said, standing. Ms. Bush is making an informed decision. She understands the implications. Judge Williams studied Ivanka for a long moment, saw something in her composure that gave her pause. But the law was clear. If both parties agreed, and both were competently represented, the court would honor their settlement. Very well. Let's execute the documents. The bailiff distributed the agreement packages. Joseph reached for his copy eagerly, pen already in hand. He flipped to the signature pages, scanning quickly, names, dates, asset divisions. Everything he'd demanded, right there in legal language. He signed with a flourish, then again on the next page.
And the next.
Marcus Holloway, because he was a good lawyer even when representing a terrible client, took his time. He reviewed the main agreement carefully, nodded, advised Joseph to initial where indicated. Then he reached the addendum. His face changed. Confusion flickered across his features. He flipped backward through the pages, then forward again. His pen stopped moving. He leaned toward Joseph, whispered urgently, Sir, we need to talk.
Now.
Joseph waved him off without looking up, annoyed.
Not now.
We're almost done. Sir, the liability disclosure. What about it? Joseph kept signing. You're assuming all debt associated with these assets. Marcus's voice carried an edge of panic professionals rarely displayed. Joseph finally stopped, looked at Marcus. What debt? Marcus turned to the addendum, pointed. Joseph actually read the document for the first time. Primary residence, 847 Bellevue Court. Market value, $1,200,000 first mortgage, $486,000 second mortgage, refinance, 2023 $150,000 third mortgage, business loan, 2024 $200,000 home equity line, 2024 $364,000 total debt, $1,400,000 net value, minus $200,000. Credit obligations, Capital Reserve Financial, $18,450 Slate Financial, $31,200 Freedom Credit, $37,800 total credit debt, $87,450. Vehicle lease obligations, Tesla Model X, remaining payments, $72,000 BMW X5, remaining payments plus balloon, $53,000 total vehicle debt, $125,000. Total undisclosed liabilities, $437,000. The color drained from Joseph's face. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. This isn't right. Judge Williams looked up sharply. Mr. Bush. She hid this from me. His voice rose, panic replacing confidence. This is fraud. These numbers are fake. Mr. Bush, sit down. The judge's tone was steel. These documents are manipulated. She's lying. Mr. Bush.
Sit down. Now.
He sat, but his breathing was ragged, eyes wild. Judge Williams studied the liability disclosure section. Her expression remained neutral, but something almost like satisfaction flickered in her eyes. She'd suspected something. Mr. Bush, according to this disclosure, these are debts in your name. Credit cards you opened, loans you took out using marital property as collateral. Patricia stood smoothly. Your Honor, we have complete documentation. Forged signatures on credit applications, fraudulent loan documents, unauthorized refinancing. The evidence has been verified by a licensed forensic investigator. She approached the bench, handed up Sandra Chen's investigation report. 6 months of work, bound in navy leather, tabs marking each section. Credit card fraud, mortgage fraud, identity theft, loan fraud, documentary evidence. Each fraudulent act itemized, photographed, verified, and decidedly criminal. Marcus Holloway found his voice, desperate to protect himself. Your Honor, I advised my client to conduct an independent financial review before signing. I have documentation. He produced a form from his briefcase. Waiver of independent financial audit. Joseph's signature at the bottom, dated 2 weeks ago. Below it, a note in Marcus's handwriting. Client advised to review. Client declined against counsel recommendation. The CYA document every good lawyer requires when they sense something wrong. Joseph's desperation exploded. I didn't understand what I was signing. Judge Williams removed her glasses, fixed him with a look that had withered stronger men. Mr. Bush, you're a businessman, are you not? You worked in sales, ran your own consulting company. Yes, but you signed a waiver declining to investigate the financial situation. You demanded these specific assets. The disclosure was attached to the settlement agreement. You chose not to read it carefully.
She paused.
Or perhaps you thought you were getting away with something? Joseph turned to Ivanka, fury and realization warring on his face. You knew all along. Ivanka met his eyes calmly, spoke for the first time since her initial statement. Her voice was clear, steady, without malice but without mercy. I was your wife for 12 years, Joseph. I handled our finances because you weren't interested in the details. Yes, I knew. She paused. You opened credit cards in my name. You forged my signature on loan documents. You refinanced our home without my knowledge. You stole from me systematically for years. So yes, I knew. And I documented everything. You set me up.
No.
Her voice cut through his protest like a blade. You set yourself up. I just made sure you got exactly what you demanded. Judge Williams reviewed the documents one final time. Patricia had done exceptional work. Every legal requirement met, every disclosure properly attached, every signature authenticated. The settlement was ironclad. The agreement stands as signed, Judge Williams declared. Mr. Bush receives all requested assets, including the primary residence at 847 Bellevue Court, both vehicles, all retirement accounts, and joint savings, along with all associated liabilities, debts, liens, and obligations related to said assets. Joseph started to rise. The bailiff stepped forward. Ms. Bush receives her settlement of $75,000 cash and is hereby released from all marital debt, obligation, and liability. The judge's gaze moved to Ivanka, and something almost imperceptible passed between them, one woman acknowledging another's strategic brilliance. This marriage is dissolved. The gavel fell with a sound like finality itself.
Bang.
Ivanka stood slowly, smoothed her navy dress with steady hands. She picked up her purse, glanced once at Patricia, who nodded with satisfaction. Then she looked at Joseph one final time. He sat slumped in his chair, the expensive fraudulent suit suddenly looking cheap. The confident swagger collapsed into something smaller, defeated. Marcus Holloway was already packing his briefcase, calculating how quickly he could distance himself from this disaster. His reputation would survive. He had the waiver, the documented advice, but Joseph was radioactive now. You wanted everything, Joseph. Ivanka's voice was quiet but carried perfectly in the silent courtroom. I gave you exactly what you asked for. She turned and walked toward the exit, Patricia beside her, her mother falling into step behind them. She didn't look back, didn't pause, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing any emotion beyond calm finality. Behind her, Joseph's voice cracked. Ivanka. She pushed through the courtroom doors. They swung shut, cutting off whatever desperate plea he'd been forming. In the hallway, Melissa Grant stood waiting, smile expectant. She saw Ivanka's face, composed, neutral, and some of her confidence faltered. She saw Patricia's satisfied expression. She saw Claudette's proud stance. What happened? Melissa asked Joseph as he stumbled into the hallway moments later, Marcus Holloway making excuses about other appointments. Joseph couldn't
Speak.
He leaned against the wall, the weight of $437,000 in debt settling onto his shoulders like cement. Melissa's phone buzzed. A text from her friend at work, who'd been watching Joseph's social media. Girl, is it true he took everything in the divorce? Someone said he got the house and cars, and everything. She looked at Joseph's gray face, his shaking hands. Baby. Her voice was small. What happened? I got everything, Joseph whispered. That's what happened. Outside the courthouse, Ivanka stood on the steps, breathing deeply. Seattle stretched before her. Gray sky, salt air, the sound of traffic and life continuing indifferently. Patricia stood beside her, Claudette just behind. How do you feel? Patricia asked. Ivanka considered the question. She felt exhausted, vindicated, sad for what had been real before it became strategy. But mostly she felt free. Like I can start over, she said. For real this time. Claudette squeezed her daughter's shoulder. Your grandmother would be proud, baby. They walked down the courthouse steps together, 3 generations of strength, leaving Joseph Bush to figure out how he'd explain to Melissa that the dream house came with a nightmare mortgage. That everything he'd won would cost him everything he had. That his ex-wife had played him better than he'd ever played anyone. The game was over. Ivanka had won. The courthouse hallway stretched long and cold, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Melissa Grant stood near the elevator bank, designer bag clutched against her hip, phone in hand, scrolling nervously through Instagram to appear occupied. The raised voice that erupted from courtroom 4 made her jump. Joseph's voice, desperate and furious, muffled by heavy wood doors, but unmistakably panicked. Confusion flickered across her carefully made-up face. What's happening? The courtroom doors swung open. Marcus Holloway emerged first, stone-faced, briefcase gripped tight, already mentally composing the memo that would protect him from this debacle. Melissa rushed toward him, heels clicking on marble. Is it done? Did he get everything? Marcus stopped, looked at her with something between pity and contempt. Oh, he got everything, including $500,000 in debt. The words hung in the air. Wait, what debt? The debt he created. Using forged documents. Potentially criminal fraud. Marcus adjusted his briefcase. Credit card fraud, mortgage fraud, identity theft. The prosecutors are going to have a field day. Melissa's face went white. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked past Marcus through the courtroom doors where Joseph sat slumped at the defendant's table, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. She saw not a successful businessman about to start fresh, but a liability. A crater where a future should have been. She turned without a word and walked away, heels clicking purposefully toward the elevator. No goodbye, no explanation, just rapid calculation and self-preservation. When Joseph emerged 5 minutes later, searching the hallway with desperate eyes, Melissa was gone. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking. Called her. Straight to voicemail. Melissa, baby, please. Let me explain. This isn't, please call me back. He tried his brother next. Marcus, I need help. I need a loan. Can you? His brother's voice was flat, exhausted. Joe, I told you this was a bad idea. I told you to be fair with Ivanka. Now you're calling me for money to cover fraud debt. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I can't help you. I'm sorry.
Click.
Joseph called Marcus Holloway. There has to be a way to reverse this. An appeal, something. You signed, Mr. Bush. You refused the audit. You waived due diligence. The judge was explicit. It's final. A pause. And frankly, you should be more worried about the criminal investigation than the divorce settlement.
Click.
Joseph stood alone in the empty hallway, phone in hand, surrounded by the echoing silence of consequence. Outside on the courthouse steps, Patricia stood beside Ivanka, both women breathing the cool Seattle air. At the bottom of the steps, Claudette waited, hands folded, patient and proud. That was the most satisfying case of my career, Patricia said quietly, allowing herself a small smile. Ivanka descended the steps slowly, feeling lighter with each one. Her mother's embrace was warm, solid, real. "Baby," Claudette whispered, holding her daughter tight. "Your grandmother would be so proud." Ivanka felt tears prick her eyes for the first time that day. Not tears of sadness or victory, but of relief. Of ending. Of beginning. "Let's go home," she said. Melissa moved out of the Bellevue house overnight. Joseph came home from a desperate meeting with yet another lawyer to find her closet empty, her toiletries gone, a note on the kitchen counter written in her looping script. "This isn't what I signed up for." He crumpled it, threw it across the kitchen. Then he opened the mail. First mortgage payment, $6,800. Second mortgage payment, $2,100. Home equity line payment, $1,850. His monthly take-home salary, approximately $6,250. He stared at the numbers, calculator in hand, adding and re-adding as if different arithmetic might save him. It didn't. The credit card companies started calling. Not the polite automated reminders, but actual human beings from collections departments. "Mr. Bush, your Capital Reserve account is past due. Minimum payment of $920 is required immediately. There must be some mistake. That's not my..." "Sir, this account was opened in 2023. The applications have your signature, your social security number, your date of birth." He tried the other cards. Same story. Same signatures he'd carefully forged. Same social security number, his own, that he'd used to piggyback on Ivanka's excellent credit. Total minimum payments across all fraudulent credit cards, $2,600 monthly. "This can't be right," he whispered to empty walls. But it was. Joseph called a realtor. "I need to sell. Fast." The realtor, a cheerful woman named Jennifer, toured the house, took photos, pulled comps. Then she sat him down at his own kitchen table. "Mr. Bush, I have to be honest with you. You're approximately $200,000 underwater."
What?
"The house is worth $1.2 million. Was worth that before you refinanced and took out $150,000 in 2023. And another $200,000 against the equity in 2024. She showed him her spreadsheet. "Between the original mortgage, the refinancing, and the business loan, you owe $1.4 million. Current market value is $1.2 million, maybe $1.15 if we're lucky. So, I'll make less profit than I thought." "No, Mr. Bush. You'll owe money. Best case scenario is a short sale where the bank agrees to take the loss. You'll still owe the difference, and your credit will be destroyed. Worst case, they foreclose and sue you for the deficiency." Joseph's world tilted. This was supposed to be the prize. The house was supposed to be worth millions. Jennifer packed her laptop quietly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bush. Did you not review the title before you in the divorce? Did you not? Just go." The business loan payment came due, $4,200 monthly. The car leases, $2,100 combined. Joseph spread bills across his kitchen table, his calculator, his laptop, trying desperately to make the math work. Monthly obligations, $17,650 monthly income, $6,250 deficit, minus $11,400. He started missing payments. First the credit cards. What did it matter? His credit was already destroyed. Then the car leases. The BMW got repossessed from his work parking lot. Coworkers watched through windows. His credit score, once bolstered by Ivanka's financial discipline, cratered from 780 to 542 in 6 weeks. He called his brother again. Voicemail. He called former colleagues. "Hey man, I'm in a tough spot. Just temporarily if you could." Awkward silence. "I heard things didn't go well with the divorce, Joe. I'm sorry, but I can't help right now." Everyone had heard. Seattle's professional circles were small. Word traveled fast. Joseph Bush forged documents, committed fraud, got destroyed in divorce court by the wife he tried to rob. Month 3. The bankruptcy attorney's office was in a strip mall in Kent, cheap rent and desperate clientele. Joseph sat across from a tired man named Richard Chun who'd seen 1,000 stories like this. Mr. Bush, you're facing $437,000 in debt against minimal assets. Chapter 7 bankruptcy might discharge some of it, but he flipped through Joseph's documents. The fraud complicates things. Debts obtained through fraud typically aren't dischargeable. What does that mean? It means you'll still owe, even after bankruptcy. Richard leaned back. What about the fraud charges? Have you been contacted by prosecutors? Not yet. Maybe they won't. They will. Bank fraud, credit card fraud, forgery, identity theft. The evidence is documented. You should retain a criminal defense attorney. Immediately. Joseph's hands shook. Can I blame her? Say she knew and… Absolutely not. Richard's voice was sharp. Your signatures are on everything. Your applications. Your fake business documentation. You opened the cards, took the loans, forged the documents. Your ex-wife documented everything and disclosed it properly in the divorce. You're not a victim here, Mr. Bush. You're a perpetrator. Joseph left the bankruptcy attorney's office and sat in his Tesla, the one with $72,000 remaining in lease payments, and stared at nothing. Joseph's social media, once full of inspirational quotes and new beginnings, went dark. He deleted posts, made his accounts private, disappeared from the digital spaces where his carefully curated image had lived. Former friends didn't call. Acquaintances from the gym stopped acknowledging him. His sales job, already hanging by a thread, ended with an HR meeting and a severance package that barely covered 2 weeks of his debt payments. The company can't be associated with someone facing criminal fraud charges, HR explained gently. I'm sure you understand. Meanwhile, Melissa Grant returned to her life, scrubbing Joseph from her social media, blocking his number, telling friends she'd dodged a bullet. She ran into Simone Jackson at a Starbucks in Capitol Hill 3 months after the divorce. Simone, holding a latte, smiled with predatory satisfaction. So, you dated a guy committing financial fraud. How's that working out? Melissa's face flushed. He told me she was the problem, that she was controlling, cold. She was the solution, Simone interrupted, to his problem, which is now his problem again. Funny how that works. Melissa left without ordering. By month 4, Joseph Bush lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Renton, the house in foreclosure, the cars repossessed, the life he'd built with fraud and arrogance reduced to IKEA furniture and crushing debt. The criminal investigation moved forward methodically. Federal prosecutors reviewing Sandra Chen's report. Credit card companies filing complaints. Banks pursuing civil suits. Joseph's attempts to paint himself as a victim found no audience. The evidence was too clear, too documented, too damning. He sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by legal bills he couldn't pay, staring at his phone, scrolling through old photos of the life he'd destroyed, including several with Ivanka, smiling, before he decided she was the enemy instead of his partner. In one photo, they stood on their wedding day, Lake Washington behind them, both young and hopeful. He deleted it. Then he called his court-appointed criminal defense attorney and asked about plea deals. Depends on the charges, the attorney said. Could be probation, could be prison time. They're still building the case. Joseph hung up and stared at the ceiling of his cheap apartment, listening to neighbors through thin walls, smelling someone else's dinner cooking. He'd wanted everything. Now he had exactly that. Everything he deserved. 6 months after the divorce, Ivanka woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the sound of Pike Place Market drifting up from the street below. Her apartment was smaller than the Bellevue house, a 2-bedroom in a modern building downtown, but it was entirely, completely hers. She'd decorated with intention. Clean lines, natural wood, plants that thrived in Seattle's gray light. Photos of Claudette and her grandmother sat on the bookshelf beside her business school textbooks, and a growing collection of fiction she'd never had time to read before. The space felt like peace. Her morning coffee ritual had become sacred. French press, quiet minutes on the small balcony, watching the city wake up. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no performance required. Just Ivanka, alone and content. The financial reality was surreal when she let herself think about it. The stock options, $4.7 million that Joseph had never known existed, sat safely in investment accounts, legally separate, completely protected. She'd used $500,000 to purchase a small apartment building in Columbia City outright, no mortgage, pure ownership. Another $2 million went into a trust fund for her future, retirement, security, freedom. The remaining $1.5 million was diversified across index funds and bonds, managed by a financial advisor who understood her goals. She lived off her salary. The investments remained untouched, growing quietly. Her credit score had recovered. The fraudulent accounts removed from her record after Sandra Chen's investigation provided prosecutors with everything they needed. 780, same as it had been before Joseph tried to destroy it. Not secret money, she told Patricia over lunch one afternoon. Just mine. At work, something unexpected happened. Her reputation grew stronger. Colleagues who'd witnessed her difficult personal time now watched her return with renewed focus and admired the grace she'd shown under pressure. Speaking engagement requests arrived, women in tech conferences, leadership panels, corporate events wanting to hear about resilience and strategic thinking. The promotion came 4 months after the divorce. Executive Vice President, base salary $450,000, expanded responsibilities across the merged TechFlow Cascade organization. A board seat offer followed from a mid-sized biotech company seeking diverse leadership. She accepted both. Young women at the company started seeking her mentorship. She said yes more often than not, remembering what it felt like to navigate corporate America alone. Patricia Liu had become more than her attorney. Their monthly lunches evolved into genuine friendship, two women who'd fought a war together and emerged victorious. "You taught me something about patience," Patricia said over sushi in Belltown. "Most clients want to react immediately, emotionally. You played the long game." "You taught me something about strategy," Ivanka replied. "I knew what I wanted. You showed me how to get it legally, completely, permanently." They toasted with sake, a private celebration of justice served cold. Weekly dinners with Claudette became tradition. Ivanka drove to her mother's Tacoma house every Sunday, helping cook the Haitian dishes her grandmother had taught Claudette decades ago. "You know what your grandmother told me once?" Claudette said, stirring the pot of juma soup that filled the small kitchen with warmth. Ivanka looked up from chopping vegetables. "I was maybe 25, working 2 jobs, scared about money. Your father had just left, promising child support I knew would never come." Claudette's voice softened with memory. "Mama sat me down in her kitchen, smaller than this one, you remember, and she said, 'A woman who knows her worth never has to prove it. She just has to protect it.' I didn't understand then. I thought she meant pride, ego. But she meant something else." Claudette turned from the stove, ladle in hand. "She meant knowing what belongs to you. Your work, your future, your peace, and never letting anyone take it without consequences." Ivanka felt tears prick her eyes. "I finally understand what that means." "I know, baby." Claudette smiled. "You lived it." Simone Jackson had known all along. "Girl, I knew you had a plan," she admitted during a wine night at Ivanka's new apartment. "The way you were falling apart was too organized. You were sad, sure, but you weren't broken. There's a difference." Ivanka laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't managed in years. Was it that obvious? "To me? Yes. To everyone else? Oscar-worthy performance. Seriously." Simone raised her glass. "To my brilliant, scheming, patient-as-hell best friend who let her cheating fraud of a husband think he won before destroying him with his own paperwork." They clinked glasses, giggling like the 8-year-olds they'd once been. At work, David Park approached her about co-leading a new strategic initiative, expansion into Asian markets, complex and high stakes. "I want someone who can handle pressure without falling apart," he said. "You proved that quality." Their collaboration was professional, respectful, free of romantic complication. Just two executives doing excellent work, mutual appreciation based on competence rather than chemistry. It was refreshing. Ivanka started volunteering with a women's financial literacy nonprofit downtown. Every other Saturday, she taught workshops. Protecting your financial identity, red flags in relationships, building independent wealth. She shared her story, anonymized, generalized, as a cautionary tale. A successful woman whose husband systematically committed fraud, who nearly lost everything because she'd trusted her partner with access she should have guarded. "Know what's yours," she told rooms full of women taking notes. Separate accounts aren't distrust. They're protection. Credit monitoring isn't paranoia. It's responsibility. After one session, a young woman approached, maybe 26, engaged, nervous. "I checked," she whispered. "Like you suggested. My fiancé has $90,000 in hidden debt. Credit cards, car loans. He never told me." Ivanka's heart clenched. "What are you going to do? End it. Before I marry into his financial nightmare." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You saved me. Before it was too late." Ivanka hugged her, thinking of the woman she'd been at 26, meeting Joseph at that tech mixer, never imagining what he'd become. "You saved yourself," she said. "You just needed someone to show you it was okay to look." Joseph's life continued its downward trajectory in ways Ivanka only heard about through the Seattle professional grapevine, that efficient gossip network that connected everyone who mattered. Bankruptcy filed. House foreclosed, sold at auction for a fraction of what he'd owed. Criminal charges resolved through a plea deal. 3 years probation, restitution payments he could never afford, 500 hours of community service. He lived in his brother's basement now, working retail at a sporting goods store, his business career destroyed beyond repair. The fraud conviction made him unhireable in any position requiring financial responsibility. He'd attempted to contact her once, 3 months post-divorce. An email that made it past her blocks through a new address. "I made mistakes.
Can we talk?"
She'd replied once, "No. Lose this address. Do not contact me again." He hadn't. She saw his LinkedIn profile occasionally when connections overlapped. No photo, minimal information, no job listed. He'd seen her promotion announcement. She knew because Marcus Bush mentioned it during a chance encounter at a gas station. "He saw you made executive VP," Joseph's brother said quietly. "Asked if I'd heard anything about you." "What did you tell him?" "That you're doing great. And that he should focus on his own life." Marcus paused. "I'm sorry, Ivanka. For what he did. For not seeing it sooner. You tried to warn him. He didn't listen." She'd squeezed Marcus's arm. "That's not on you." 6 months and 2 days after the divorce, Ivanka sat in a downtown Starbucks, laptop open, reviewing acquisition proposals for TechFlow. The place was crowded, Seattle professionals in their natural habitat, caffeine and ambition mixing in the air. "Ivanka." She looked up. Joseph stood 3 feet away, looking haggard in a way that made him seem older than 37. His clothes were clean but worn, his posture defeated. He'd lost weight, gained shadows under his eyes. "Can we talk?" His voice was small. She studied him for a long moment, weighing options. Then she closed her laptop. "You have 5 minutes." He sat across from her, hands clasped on the table. "I didn't know it was that bad. The debt, the consequences. I made mistakes." "Stop." Her voice was firm but not cruel. "You didn't make mistakes, Joseph. You made choices. For years. Calculated, deliberate choices to forge my signature, open accounts in my name, steal from our marriage. I lost everything."
"No."
She leaned forward slightly. "You got everything you asked for. You just didn't bother to understand what it was. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts, you demanded them. I gave them to you. Not my fault you never investigated what came with them." "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "For all of it. The affair, the fraud, the way I treated you. I accept your apology." She spoke carefully, meaning every word. "But I don't forgive you. And I don't need to. Ivanka." You spent years resenting my success while using it to fund your lies. You sat at our dinner table making passive-aggressive comments about my career while secretly destroying my credit. You brought your mistress into our home. She paused, letting him hear it. You forged my signature. You tried to steal my future. I know.
So, I let you.
I gave you exactly what you demanded, and now you live with it. Just like I lived with your disrespect, your contempt, your systematic betrayal for years. Joseph's eyes were red. Was it worth it? All this revenge. It wasn't revenge, Joseph. Ivanka stood, gathering her laptop and bag. It was justice. And yes, it was worth every single second. She looked at him one last time. The man she'd married at 27, loved despite red flags, tried to build a life with. He was a stranger now, a cautionary tale, a chapter that taught her everything about what she'd never tolerate again. Goodbye, Joseph. For the last time. She walked out into the Seattle afternoon, leaving him at the table with his regrets. That evening, Ivanka drove to her investment property in Columbia City, a modest 12-unit apartment building she'd purchased with cash. Well-maintained, good tenants, managed by a property company that shared her values. A prospective tenant waited in the small office. Tasha Williams, 32, single mother with 2 kids, recently divorced. Credit score battered by her ex-husband's financial irresponsibility, but steady employment as a nurse. I know my credit isn't great, Tasha said nervously, reviewing the application. But I pay my bills. My ex left me with some debt that I'm working through. Ivanka reviewed the application. Employment verified, income adequate, references solid. The credit score told a familiar story, a woman rebuilding after someone else's damage. Application approved, Ivanka said. You can move in next month. Tasha's eyes widened. Really? Even with my credit? I believe in second chances. And fresh starts. Ivanka smiled. Welcome home. That Sunday, Claudette visited the property. Ivanka gave her the full tour. The buildings she'd bought outright, the renovations she'd funded, the tenants she'd carefully selected. Your grandmother left you that money from her house sale, so you'd have choices, Claudette said, standing in the courtyard garden Ivanka had planted. She worked her whole life for that house. Wanted you to have something nobody could take. I used it to give myself freedom, Ivanka said. And now I'm using the returns to give other people opportunity. That's legacy, baby. Claudette squeezed her daughter's hand. That's what she wanted. Not just wealth. Purpose. They stood together in the garden, 2 generations of strong women, survivors of men who'd underestimated them. That evening, Ivanka stood on the building's roof, watching sunset paint Seattle in shades of gold and amber. The city spread below, Puget Sound glittering to the west, mountains rising in the east, downtown towers catching the last light. She pulled out her phone, texted Simone, dinner tonight? My treat. We're celebrating. 3 dots appeared. Then, what are we celebrating? Ivanka smiled, typing her response, everything. She pocketed her phone and stayed on the roof, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of the past 6 months, the past 12 years, the lifetime of lessons that had brought her here. People asked if she regretted the 12 years with Joseph. Friends, colleagues, her mother during quiet moments. She didn't. Those years taught her who she was. And who she wasn't. She wasn't someone who could be taken advantage of. She wasn't someone who would accept less than she deserved. She wasn't someone who stayed broken when the world tried to break her. She was Ivanka Bush, 38 years old, successful, secure, and free. Executive vice president earning nearly $500,000 annually. Property owner, investor, mentor, survivor, strategist. And she'd done it all herself, just like her grandmother said she could. In the divorce, her husband took everything. Everything she wanted him to take. The house with its crushing debt, the cars with their impossible payments, the retirement accounts that would cost more to access than they were worth, the joint savings he'd already depleted. And she took back herself, which was always worth more anyway. The sun dipped below the Olympic Mountains, casting the city into twilight. Somewhere in his brother's basement, Joseph Bush scrolled through job listings, calculating how many retail hours it would take to pay his restitution. Somewhere in a comfortable apartment, Melissa Grant went on a date with a new man, having learned nothing from her previous mistakes. But here, on this rooftop, Ivanka Bush stood tall, whole, and genuinely at peace, not because she destroyed her ex-husband, but because she'd protected herself. Not because she'd won some game, but because she'd refused to lose herself. She smiled at the city she'd conquered. Not through marriage, not through luck, but through patience, strategy, and the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. The wind picked up, carrying the salt smell of the sound. Ivanka breathed it in and headed downstairs to meet her best friend for dinner. The past was settled. The future was hers. The Seattle Business Journal headline read, "Tech executive Ivanka Bush appointed to board of directors at 3 major companies." In the accompanying photo, she stood in her corner office at TechFlow, confident and composed. The article mentioned her recent keynote at a Women in Leadership conference, her nonprofit work with financial literacy programs, her reputation as a mentor to young professionals. It didn't mention Joseph. That story was old news, relevant only as background, a footnote in the larger narrative of her success. At a coffee shop in Renton, a young woman recognized Ivanka from one of her workshops. "Ms. Bush, I just wanted to say thank you. I took your financial literacy course last year. I just bought my first condo. In my name only. With my money." Ivanka hugged her. "That's exactly what I hoped for. Congratulations." "Did you ever?" The young woman hesitated. "Did your ex-husband ever try to contact you again?" "No," Ivanka said. "And I hope he's found some peace. But either way, it's not my concern anymore." Because that was the truth she'd learned, the wisdom her grandmother had tried to teach. Your worth isn't determined by who hurt you or how you responded. It's determined by who you became despite them. Ivanka Bush became free. And freedom, she discovered, was worth everything. If this story changed something in you, if it reminded you that walking away doesn't mean losing, if it showed you that protecting yourself isn't selfish, share it.
Subscribe.
Because somewhere right now another woman needs to hear this. And she's searching for proof that justice isn't just possible, it's patient. Before you go, tell us, how would you rate this story from 0 to 10? Your voice matters here. And where are you watching from today? Drop your country in the comments and help us grow a global circle built on kindness, love, and second chances. If this story stayed with you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it too. Every share, every subscription brings us closer to our 1K family and helps us keep telling stories of resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being here. Truly, this journey is richer because of you.